Thank you for being part of the LA Galaxy family that we talk about all the time. You are a very important part of this family. You've been here through thick and thin, many of you from day one, many of you through all 5 championships, the U.S. Open Cups, including the Confederations Cup that the Galaxy won. It's been a great journey, a fantastic journey, and your club right now is in the thick of things, looking to bring you another championship. Officially, this is called A Conversation with Greg, which I will kick off. And I do have some prepared questions, but we had a little meeting beforehand, and we realized that you guys love this club just as much as we do. And we appreciate you being here, and we know that an opportunity to talk to the manager of the LA Galaxy doesn't come all that often. And so my friends Diana and Paulina, Diana will be on this side and Paulina will be on this side. They'll have microphones. And throughout the evening, we'll be taking some questions along the way. As you know, I'm moderating tonight. And as you know, we have mutual respect for you. And we ask the same of the manager and everybody else with the LA Galaxy. So thank you for being here tonight. And without further ado, please welcome Greg Vanney. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Thanks for being here
Happy to be
tonight.
here, yeah, thank you.
3-3 draw last night. How was your Friday? Good?
Game days are always predicated by the game, which we know. Yesterday was a frustrating one, obviously up 2-0 at half. Want to see the game out. We didn't do so, but obviously the guys were able to fight back and at least take a point and keep Seattle, which is a good team, behind us, which is an important point. But at 2-0 up, we want to close things out. Right? That's the objective. And so disappointed from that side of things. But as I said to the group, and we talked a little bit afterwards, that last year, if any of you remember the RSL game where we gave up the goal in like the dying seconds of the game, it was a throw-in and our attacking half the field, and it ended up in the back of our net. It became the difference between us being in the playoffs and not, because RSL and us flopped spots, and we didn't get that point back, and it ended up being the difference. So by keeping them behind us yesterday and getting that point, there's something to that. But again, it's another moment for us in which we need to protect our goal better, we need to manage the game better, and we need to come away with a win, especially at home and like that.
It's so tight in the Western Conference. I mean, you know, one win is it's a playoff win these days. And a draw is kind of like, of course, disappointing. And I would say, and in fact I said it at the end of the game, is that both teams come away from this game being disappointed. The Galaxy, unfortunately, not being able to hold on to the lead, but then fighting back to get that draw. Seattle putting 3 goals in the second half, thinking that, hey, we got our first of potentially 3 games away, 3 points in the bank, and they couldn't finish either. So these are 2 of the best teams in Major League Soccer that had to share the points on this night and maybe lick your wounds, but also say, yeah, we got that point, and we can build on to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, even if you look at the results tonight, they kind of go our way again. It's just been, that's the way the Western Conference has been this year. There's obviously a couple of teams that have had a good run at things, but a lot of teams are not finding that consistent level for different reasons. Seattle being one of them, who's a very talented team, but has also had their ups and downs in the season. And so one of the biggest challenges is in MLS, because of the parity and because of the way the league is to find that consistency where you can step on the field and you can get results pretty much every time out. Some of that comes with, a little bit of that is talent, a little bit of that is continuity, a little bit of that is confidence. It's the psychological part of the game that when your team is flowing, and those little margins in our league are so important. And when one of those or 2 of those are off a little bit, you get the ups and downs. And for us, we've gotten into a stretch now where we're conceding goals too easily, but we're scoring goals, but we're conceding goals sometimes just too easily. And when you're doing that, you're vulnerable. and we've shown some vulnerabilities on that side of things, especially as of late.
Let's talk a bit about the project that is the LA Galaxy right now for you, because you just added another player at this point of the season, Ricky Pooge, who made his debut last night, right?
Yeah.
He did all right. He did all right. Absolutely. But he has to hit the ground running, and his teammates do also.
Yeah, it's entering the MLS mid-season is not easy. A lot of players through the history have not had the greatest of successes when they come mid-season and they have to get into the rhythm of things. A lot come from being in a full season before, they've taken a month off, and then they're joining at the probably the most difficult time of our year, which is the playoff race and that real moment. So for him, his fitness level was good. The only thing that he really ran into last night is we unfortunately, basically right when he got on the field, we had given up the third goal, which meant that the game became really compact on the attacking side. And they had a 5-4-1. There's not a lot of space between the lines, and that's where he really does his work. He's just so shifty and quick between the lines, but there was just not much space. So he was having to come outside of that space to pick up the ball and still try to create some things off of it. But ultimately, when games get opened up a little bit and there's some space on that field, he's really something to watch, and different for us because of his capacity to, from the middle of the park, to be able to eliminate lines and to play off of people in one touch and play quick and bounce off the striker and get to the other side. A lot of our midfielders are very good at connecting the game, but they don't really eliminate players, and he eliminates players through the middle of the field, which puts a lot of pressure on the opposition's back line. And so we're excited to get him going. He hasn't been here long, and he's only trained with the guys for a few times. And so, but we'll look forward to it. Like I said to him, once we got him out last night, there's going to be no looking back. He's ready to go, and our expectation is to be ready to go.
Do you have any concern, for example, you go to New England, artificial surface, I'm not sure what type of experience he has on artificial surface, and do you have any concerns or any thoughts about that going in?
Not too many. I mean, it's funny because I had dinner with his family. His parents are here, and his siblings and stuff, and agents and everything the night he came in. And it was kind of then when he really realized that there's artificial turf inside of the league, where he really kind of thought about it. So it was kind of funny, like, how many games do we play on the artificial surface? And so we were going through the league and giving him the games we had left, but also the stadiums that had turf. He didn't seem to mind it. I don't think it's something they look forward to. Most players don't. But he's young and is coming to us and ready to play every minute of every game. That's his mindset. And so I don't think he would allow me to not put him on the field. If that were the case, he's going to fight to be on the field every second he can. So I'm not overly concerned about that.
So the project is not only the Major League Soccer LA Galaxy, it also goes all the way down to the academies. And Greg was at Academy games earlier today in Temecula. So that is something I know that you're proud of, because the Academy is really coming together.
Yeah, the way I envision this, and when I've talked to Chris and everybody at the club about what we're trying to do here, which is sustainable success. It's to be a championship franchise and to be the best franchise in MLS again. Nowadays, as the league has grown, that entails a lot of things. That's not just, spending money and money wins championships. I don't believe it works like that anymore. You have to build infrastructure. You have to have a scouting department. You have to have an academy that functions, especially in the catchment area of Southern California, where there's so many talented players. We should have players every year coming into our first team that are knocking on the door to be a part of our team. Because you can't go out and buy multi-million-dollar players for every position. You have to have players who come through our community, who represent our fan base, who have grown up in this game. I believe that's what a big club is about, is to be able to do that as well. So when I arrived and when we talked about it, one of those things was how we restructured in the academy, how it would fit under the umbrella of the first team, and how our methodology would go from top to bottom. We've rebuilt the staff in the academy. We've had a wonderful school. I don't know how many people know that we have a school on campus that our high school age kids, which are U19s, U17s, and U15s, currently go to school on campus. Prior to this year, mostly the kids came in, they would train in the morning, they would go to school, they would go home. Now we have a cognitive department, we have a sports science department, we have the academic, which is the education department, and we have an enrichment program. And so the kids actually show up now at 8 in the morning. they're either doing their team training or they're doing their IDP training, which is individualized training. They're working on things that are specific to their needs, and they're either working with our sports science department, our cognitive department, or they're working on the field on technical things, functional things. So they're doing one of those two things, then they go to school from 10 to about 2. They have an enrichment program of which they work on different things like financial management or just social norms, things that they can have for life as they grow, because not all of these kids are going to make it. And then after that, they either do their team training or they do their IDP. They flip-flop with whatever's happened in the morning. So now they're training approximately 9 times out of the week. They're getting very individualized approach to development. And I couldn't be more proud of the staff and the people that have all come together and the group that is working together to make this what I believe is going to be the best academy in the league. And it won't be an accident, and it won't be by happenstance that we start to see the players coming through our academy that are going to impact the first team, and that will have value, and then they will go on to play in leagues around the world. And that then enables us to bring more value into our roster, and then our process really sets into motion. Because the only way you can extend your value, if you will, or your budget in MLS is to either sell or trade players, and then you bring in more resources to build out, to expand your budget, so to speak. By budget, I mean your salary cap. Sure. Right? And so you have to have assets to your team, because now I think the best teams in the league also have value inside of the roster. They have assets, they move a player, they get an extra $1 million or so in GAM, and then you can continue to build out the depth, and you can now have a fulsome team. So for us, as a part of that process, the academy plays a role in all of that, as well as the players that we're bringing in from the outside that are a little bit younger, and trying to have players who can help us win, but also players who have asset value so that we can continue to grow the club. We don't just bring in a guy, we lose him the next day or the next year, and we start over again. We're trying to create some continuity in our group. But there is, with the Galaxy, there's always a win now mentality, so it can't always be all kids. We have to have some balance inside of that. But our academy will feed into that, as is our DP ideas and how we continue to build on the roster.
So when people talk about what a big club looks like, this is what a big club looks like. The LA Galaxy, top to bottom, from the academy to the school, everything that goes from inside out that helps you create your first team that you come and support week in and week out, and we thank you for that. We're going to get to some of these right here. They're prepared questions, but also if you raise your hand, Diana or Paulina will come your way, and we'll take your questions as well as the night progresses. The first one is from Alexis. How are you planning to get into the playoffs without having more losses like this past month? Tough question. See, you thought my questions were tough.
Yeah, we have. It's an easy, but we have to win games and we have to take points. We can't have losses. And so, last game against Vancouver, good points taken at home. Last night, again, we lost 2, gained 1 maybe in the grand scheme of things. But we have to, again, the biggest thing for us is consistency. Some of that is consistency on the defensive side, making sure that we give ourselves the opportunity to win games. We can't win games 4-2 or 4-3. It's not sustainable. So we have to be solid on the defensive side, which means front to back. Everybody's involved in the defending effort. And we've got to tighten things up on that side of things. We need to win our home games, and get results in the home. I think our team has done well on the road. We're one of the teams in the league who gets some of the best results on the road. So in our road matches, we need to go and still have the mentality that we're there to take points and be stingy on the road about picking up some points. The fate it's in our hands, which is where we want to keep it. We have 1 game in hand on most of the teams, 2 on a couple because of that San Jose game that got switched. We don't even look at that. We're just trying to keep our eye on 1 game at a time mentality and trying to take points in each one of these games.
This one from Paul. How do you explain the team losing to lower level teams? I guess it's bottom of the conference type teams that you should be beating. And why not a predictable 4-4-2 formation? Maybe because it's predictable.
Well, there's 2 parts. There's 2 parts to that, right? So first is why not beating the teams that we should beat? I think it's a fair question. I think that is part of the challenge of having consistency inside of our league. No game is really a given inside of the MLS, unless again you're firing on all cylinders. I think we were off to a good stretch, and we had a good run going into the international break, which was in June, and we had beaten LAFC and we'd beat Austin, and I really felt like we were in a good rhythm. And then we came out of that that international break, and our midfield was struggling. We had, Mark had injury, Ryan was carrying an injury in his hip, Sasha was out with a knee issue, Victor was out with a rib issue, and we were really light in the midfield. And given our style of play, which is to want to have the ball, to connect, to play short passes, if you lack midfield, you're going to have a hard time. And then you're trying to manufacture ways to continue to play inside of our vision and get results. So I think we struggled. And then in our league, again, sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's connection, sometimes it's just that momentum where you have to find that again. And we've been battling to resurrect that momentum. Last game against Vancouver, when we got Victor back and we starting to get our midfield back, and we got Gaston, which was an important piece for us, is to add that defensive midfielder, because I feel like for 6 months we've kind of been doing defensive midfield by committee. Nobody is really that defensive midfielder, and adding Gaston gives us the person who has a defensive midfielder mentality, which allows Marky to be a little bit more of the runner that he is. We're starting to find more balance in our midfield, which hopefully can bring more consistency in our performance, more consistency in our results. That's the vision of things. Why not the 4-4-2? I kind of explained it just then, which is with 2 forwards on the field. If you want to have a possession style game, which is what we believe in, then you have to create overloads on the field, which is to have more numbers than the opposition in areas of the field where you can keep the ball. You invite the opposition into that area of the field, and then you quickly switch the ball out into an area where you can then have an overload in another area of the field, and that's where we create our attacks. So these are part of our principles of play. So creating an overload, for example, on the left side is to invite the opposition to the left side, while we should be setting up to attack on the right side. So now when we switch the ball to the right side, there should be space and a numerical superiority, like a 2 versus 1 on the right side where we can go. Or at worst case scenario, a 1 versus 1 with a winger against the fullback. And if you don't have the connections through midfield, because you just have 2 strikers high, it's very difficult to get the ball off of one side to the other side or one to the other. You have to have these overloads that give you the links to get from different areas of the field. Does that make sense? And so inside of that, would still want to get numbers in the box, and I know our 2 strikers are both able to score goals. But together at times, they're so similar that their mentality is to be goal scorers and to be in the box and to play on the last line and to play up against the group. It's not like you used to see with Landon and Robbie Keane. Those are different types of forwards. Our 2 forwards are very similar forwards, and so they don't necessarily link up as well together. They kind of do the same thing. And so it's trying to find, again, for me, a roster. Then when I pick a roster over the course of a day, or when we put together a roster and we talk about our roster development, it's like a puzzle. Not all the pieces do you want to be the same thing. You want to be able to put those pieces together so that people bring their individual skill sets and what they bring to the puzzle so that it fits together. Dejan, and the purpose of Dejan and Javi is to have 2 goal-scoring strikers, 2 guys that if Javi were to have an issue, that we have another guy that we can rely on. If Dejan had an issue, we have Javi who we can rely on, because you always want to have at least somebody who's going to put the ball in the back of the net. But as they've grown, they still do. They have the very similar mindset into how they approach. So they're not always great together. We still can find moments, but I don't think it's something that we want to do for 90 minutes over the course of the game too often, in my opinion.
And the importance of Victor Vasquez, the last 2 games, he's found the back of the net, but you talked about the overloads and what he brings to the game. That would allow, in my opinion, I guess, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm wrong a lot.
Not often, Joe. You're on it. You've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of things.
I have, and hopefully a lot longer.
Yeah.
But his position allows for the overloads, because when he goes left or right, then you have dominance in numbers on those particular sides, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things is Victor he's an attacking midfielder who defends on the first line, but he drops into the midfield to create overloads. He'll typically he prefers a little bit to play tilted to the left versus to the right. So sometimes Mark will push high and play a little bit to the right, but he will create overloads. He's got just a vision for the final pass, the final action. But in order for him, I look at him and think of him, for a sports analogy, he's like a quarterback, right? And he's always thinking about where the ball needs to go and how the attack's going to finish, and he's organizing that 2 or 3 player passes ahead of most people. Like, that's his goal, is he sees things that not many people see. And in order for guys like him to be successful, you have to have runners and you have to have space creators. Those are 2 things that have to exist, because if you don't have people who run behind the line, the back line, the opposition's back line is going to be so tight and not feel threatened behind them that they're just going to close off that space, which is what you saw at the end of the game, where Ricky ends up deeper and deeper. is because the opposition sits low and there's no space between the lines. So then your playmakers have to go find space to try to make the game, right? So then you need runners. And the guys who run for us, so everybody wondering why Kevin Cabral plays and continues to play, he's a space creator, right? I saw the questions. I knew what was coming.
And we knew one was coming live somewhere from upstairs, so.
I knew. But Kevin he's a space creator. He does over 1,000 meters of high-speed running. Sam is a bit of a space creator. A lot of our other guys, when you talk about Douglas, Ephra, Victor, these guys are space users. They're guys who look for the ball between the lines. They're trying to get the ball. They're trying to play make. They either take people on or they're combining. And those guys can't exist if they don't have people who create space for them. And Javi's not a big space creator. He's a finisher. So he also needs space creators. He needs somebody to back up the back line so that when he moves in the box, he has some space to work. And so it's trying to always find the balance, in my view, of space creators, space users. You have to have overloads, but you have to also have runners who are threatening the depth and the space behind. Otherwise, the spaces just get so confined. Right, and so it's trying to find the balance in those things, which are space creators and space users, but also people who take time and then people who give time. Those are other things that we try to find the balance of. If you want your Marky Delgados who play really quick with the ball and don't dribble a lot, those are time givers. And then you have guys like Victor who you want to have time because with his time he can kill the opposition. You want to give him as much time as possible. So now you're in my head a little bit on how we piece things together. It's space creators, space users, time givers, time stealers, right? And you're trying to find a balance of that so that your team can have some continuity and flow inside of what we're trying to do.
Next year I think we should have a film session. What do you think? Yeah, I think we should do that.
You can do that. We put the principals, guys doing the principals up here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be great because I like to see you at work in that regard. From Frankie. What are you most proud of while being the head coach of the LA Galaxy? I would imagine there are a lot of things returning to the Galaxy, being a player from the start and returning to the Galaxy and taking over on the bench for you that closed the circle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm most honored for the opportunity to be in this role and to lead the club that meant so much to me as a player, that gave me my opportunity, where I finished my career. I played for the fans. I know the fan bases that are out there, many of the fans who've been here since day one. And I understand what the club means to everyone who comes and watches these games. I feel that burden and that pressure to deliver for all of those people. And so I take a lot of pride in that, and I understand that is the expectation on our group. And to try to get us there is my ultimate goal, and we will get there. But that's the thing that I'm most honored, is to be in this position, to be able to help lead this club back to where everyone expects it to be and where it should be.
This question I like. It's from Jesse. If you could put one of your 96 Galaxy teammates on this team, who would it be and why?
It's a valid question. I would give two. I'm going to give two, and they might not be who you think. But I look at this team, and this team has very specific needs, in my opinion, at this point. And what I think we need is a hard-nosed, nasty sort of defender who leads and who is barking orders and holding people accountable on the defending side, and has some bite and nasty in the locker room and gets people locked in.
Danny Pena?
Well, he's not a center back. Danny Pena, but Couchman is one. When I was a young player and I came into the locker room, if we were down 1-0, there would be garbage cans all over the place. There would be things flying. You would not, that standard would not be okay. That's something that our group, we don't have that guy. Yeah. The other guy I would say would be Robin. He would be the other one, because he was the other one that was like that when I was young in 1996, where immediately right off the bat, the standard was set for on the field. And as a young player, I learned from the players who I played with as much as anyone else. And so those two guys, I think our group could use that type of defensive sort of leadership. We have guys who are nicer and they like that side of the game, but there needs to be that problem solver, that guy who's really helping to drive our group a little bit more. And I think those are two guys who did that for me as a young player. So I would say, hey, have a go at this group.
How do you think your 96 team, or the teams you played on, would fare in today's MLS?
It's so different. We would struggle in the league now. The league has come so far. so far. And there was a good group of players, but the game was not as sophisticated inside of the league as it is now tactically. Teams are much more well-versed than we were. We were a good group of players. We were guys who had they were older than me, so those guys had grinded out careers and really played through the difficult, harsh terrain of whatever the soccer leagues were to continue to have careers. And then there were young players like me who came through college, was learning from them, but the sophistication of the coaching now is different. The academies and how the players grow up and the environments that they grow up in, the international players that come in nowadays and the money that's being spent on players is just different. It's really different. I'll tell you that one thing that the 96 team would do was fight like hell. They would do that and they would compete, and if we've lost, there might be a few guys that wouldn't walk off the field on the other team, but that's but that's something a little bit different than where the game is now. Yeah.
One of the things I notice is the space, especially in the middle third. It's not there today compared to where it used to be.
No, that's a great point, and that's part of the tactical sophistication, I would say. And I endured this when I left the Galaxy and I went and played in France. And when I went to France and I was as outside back, the thing that caught me the most was how little space there was on the field, that the opposition's back line was just so tight and that windows to play balls through were so small. And that was so different than those days. That was 2002. And nowadays, MLS is more like that. The back lines in general are a lot tighter. Like I said, teams are more sophisticated in their tactical approaches. You'll see more systems now than you would see in the past. Everybody kind of did the same thing. Now you have back fives. You have a lot of different things that come at you that are a little different than maybe where the game was. And that's the way it should be. It's evolved everywhere around the world. There's coaches out there like Pep and others who they've changed kind of the perspective of the game.
Especially Pep. I mean, everybody's copycatting what he's been doing, right? Looking at your tenure with the Galaxy, this is from Greg. You've had a major influence on turning over the roster these past 2 years. As we head into year 3 this offseason, what do you see as the team's major roster needs?
Well, I think for me it's a pretty clear, and I kind of alluded to it a few minutes ago. I think just defensively we have to become more solid. I think on the attacking side, I think a little bit of it is the maturity of some of our players, with Ricky coming in and getting integrated, with Dejan continuing to score goals. You see some of our young players are coming along on the attacking side, and I think we have some pieces there. I think we could still add one more sophisticated piece on the attacking side at some point. But ultimately, I think in our league, you've got to be able to defend. You've got to keep games and win games throughout the course of a season, 1-0, 2-0. And if you can do that, then games will start to look like 3-0, 4-0 if you have the kind of attacking power that I think our group has. And so I think we have to get more solid on the defensive side. And I alluded to it before. I think inside of games, when you have to adapt, your center backs have to also be able to adapt the players around them, be able to communicate to the guys in front of them when opposition's players move into different spaces. Again, the game's become tactically more sophisticated and players have to adapt inside of the game. And you need that leadership and that communication and that direction coming from the defensive side, from back to front. It can't be your forward and your attacking midfielder who are trying to solve defensive problems in the back. It needs to come from back to front. So I think we need to continue to build on that side of things to increase our leadership and presence in that defensive half of the field.
Ricky Pooge said in the press conferences right before the game, when you unveiled him, that he expects more younger players like himself to come to Major League Soccer. And in that term, why do you think that is? Because we're losing the name of being a retirement league, which is a good thing. But you're getting players that we, by and large, may not know who they are yet.
Yeah, and I think there will be players who are mature, who come to our league and still are able to provide something to our teams. Leadership, can provide experience, can provide stability. But I do think it's becoming more and more viable, and that's one of the things when we sat down and talked about our roster build that we wanted to prove as a club, that we could bring European players that were younger here. They could add to their careers like Ryan Raveloson and then go back into a league. That would also bring us assets to then now bring in Ricky, right? We wouldn't have been able to bring in Ricky if we wouldn't have had Ryan and then sold Ryan, and then we have that opportunity. So, but I think players are seeing the league around the world as they watch even some of these veteran players to come, and now there's a lot more discussion. It's a lot more access for players to watch our league around the world. And agents are starting to get to know our league, and they're starting to realize that it's a great league for young players because every game is difficult, and every game is competitive, and the league is athletic, and there's fast pace inside of it, and it's becoming more sophisticated on the tactical side. And I think younger players are seeing that this could be a league that could be one of the top leagues in the world. When you play in the way I see Spain, Italy, there are 4 or 5 teams, and one of those teams, maybe if there's 4 or 5, are going to win. And then there's a lot of other teams that are in the middle, and then there's a few teams at the bottom, right? And there's not a ton of excitement inside of all of that. And the top teams know they're going to win on 3/4 of the weekends or more, and it's just a question of those handful of games. And this is what Ricky alluded to. Every game in our league is a challenging game. Every game is different, and every game is difficult. And I think young players can utilize that to develop themselves and develop their careers inside of this athletic and growing league. And there's a lot of attention on our league, and it's in the United States and North America. And so again, I think popularity, and people see things like the NBA and these leagues, and they see MLS as having that kind of future. The challenge, I think, for us in getting to that highest level is Champions League. And that the top clubs will always have Champions League, but I think MLS will reach the caliber of that next tier of clubs really quickly. I do believe that, after the top 4 or 5 clubs in most leagues, when you get to 6 and below, the MLS teams will start to become very competitive with those level of teams, but I think it's going to be hard to get those elite players out of Champions League, because that's the cream of the crop.
That's
really
where they want to be right now.
Yeah.
I can talk to Greg all night, and I can keep him here all night, but I understand I only have a few more minutes with him, and I really do want to give you the opportunity to ask a question. So if you do have a question, we'd like to hear from you. Gentlemen in the front, go ahead, nice and loud.
Sure. Thank you, Greg, for doing this. Appreciate it. I became a Galaxy fan under the Bruce Arena era.
Okay.
And thanks. I became a Galaxy fan in the Bruce Arena era, and while I love Bruce and everything he's done, the one thing that I disagreed with him on was his disdain for analytics. Has the Galaxy progressed in analytics since you've been on board?
Yeah, that's one of the things that didn't actually exist in the club until we've gotten here. When I say we, it's our sports science. So we use analytics in a lot of different ways, and we're actually currently building out our analytics. So I'm learning a lot about this as well. I've used analytics, but we're building out what is our reservoir. And in our reservoir is they put in analytics, all different kinds of analytics. It can be our sports science analytics, it can be our game performance analytics, and from there, our sports scientists, who we are in the process of looking to hire, can actually create algorithms that can take these different facets or pieces of information and actually draw out conclusions on those pieces of information. So it's not part of the infrastructure that existed prior, because none of the other coaches prior to us felt it was valuable. For us, we feel it's very valuable. We have KPIs, we have things, we do a lot of value looking in terms of everything on our physical side is all based off of numbers. So it's all based off of game performances, and then you take percentages of that, of high-speed running, power outputs, different things. All of that can go into this reservoir, and we gain information that helps us to work with each individual player or our team as it relates to KPIs, things like that. So it is a big part of the infrastructure that we're continuing to build inside of the club, and for me, it's a very important part of the game. You can get lost in analytics as well, because there is so much stuff. So it's about being very clear as to what things are valuable inside of our style of play, and also inside of how we want our players to play inside of our game. Otherwise, you can drown in that reservoir of information for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gentlemen in the back, and then we'll come back to you. All right? Gentlemen way in the back up top.
Hello, thank you. Greg, I know in your previous job you inherited a difficult situation and built that into a winner.
Yeah.
Is there any parallels that you see here from year 1, year 2, going into year 3 that you can point to that you saw there that are starting to happen here that give some light at the end of the tunnel here?
Yeah, there are actually. In 2015 and 2016, I would say that the team in Toronto was inconsistent. We would get some wins, we'd get some losses, In 2015 in particular, we conceded there was a lot of goals, but we scored a lot of goals. But in this giving up a lot of goals were those inconsistent results. In 2016, again, the beginning of the year, which is the first year we made it to the finals, up until about the last 10 games, we were pretty inconsistent in that season as well. We were trying to figure out with our players exactly what was the best formation for the group of players. We had Josie, we had Sebastian, we had Michael Bradley, we had these players. And so there was some inconsistencies on trying to get that group firing on all cylinders. But then once they started to find that consistency, then it was a steady rise. Got to the finals in 2016, lost to Seattle. 2017 was the treble season. So once they had really established that continuity, once they established that comfort zone of, okay, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, and we understand the principles and we understand what we're trying to do, and then they developed that belief and confidence that they could go out and win every single game that they played, then 2017 was the best season in the history of the league at that point. So the parallels are the inconsistencies that were there. We were conceding too many goals. It was an offense-heavy team to begin with. In 2016 to 17, we brought in we brought in some defensive leadership. Victor Vasquez joined the team. And the team, again, found sort of its rhythm and form and purpose and really started to take off. So I think that growth together, along with some clarity, along with that confidence and belief. Again, I said it in this league, sometimes it's around the margins. Right? We hammered LAFC, but then LAFC can still go on a run and win a lot of games. Some of these things are around the margins in our league, and it's about those things coming together in a consistent fashion that can turn the tide of a season really quick in the direction of a club and really quick if you have talent. And I do believe we have talent in our group.
One more question. Sir?
Thank you, Greg, especially for coming and giving us some technical thought about the way the team.
My pleasure.
Would you consider releasing a technical report on the game after each game? Of what went well, what wasn't so good, what worked and not, so that we can follow along on some of the developments that you are working on and the team is working on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd have to think about how that would get delivered and how that would work out. But it's
We should do a weekly
it's
show.
an interesting thought. Yeah, I mean,
That's what we should do.
so one thing that you know about me, Joe, is I can talk about this, and I really don't try to hide anything. I'll tell you exactly how I feel about situations, so long as it doesn't hurt anyone inside of our group. But I'm pretty candid and honest about where I feel like we're at and where I feel things should be. I could talk about it after every game if you want. To me, it's an interesting idea. It's just my thought process. How do you deliver on something like that and not give too much away to everybody else who is playing against you? At the same time, give you guys, the fans who care, what they would be looking for. So sometimes that's the reporter's job, is to ask the right questions, right?
And we do have to do better in that regard. We do have to do better.
Yeah.
Link us a lot more closely to the team and to the
Yeah.
development. That would be good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Really, it's about the delivery on that, how to deliver on something like that.
So we have come to the end of our program here. Thank you for being so thoughtful.
That's my pleasure.
And
Honored
thank
to
you
be
for sharing
here.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Galaxy family, for being here tonight and sharing this evening with us. We look forward to the next home game. We look forward to the next game when the Galaxy are on the road at New England.
We'll be there.
And we'll have
All
it
right.
for you, Kobe Jones and I, with Nikki Kay on Spectrum Sportsnet, and hopefully they'll be coming home with 3 points and feeling a lot better where they are in the Western Conference. That is like on the back stretch of a NASCAR race right now with fenders flying all over the place. And that's how it's going to be. But it's supposed to be emotional. It's supposed to be dramatic. And that's where we are right now. And having you guys engage, celebrating the team, and also living through some of the times that are not so positive for us is very important, especially when the team is down, that you guys are here with the club. This is a family, and you are a very important part of it. Thank you again for being here. God bless you, and go Galaxy.
Yep, appreciate it.